the formatting before. Excuse me. I am going to talk a little bit about the past round, and I see most of you have been in your teams or have been saving some decisions for round 16, I think. Yes, we're going into round 16, and we'll talk a little bit about the results of 15, some of my observations, suggestions, talk a little bit about some chapters, going to review one of the figures out of chapter 9 on ethics that we talked about last week, that one chart, three-point chart, and then go into 10 and maybe a little bit of 11. There's some good points there. What I am looking at as far as going over the reports is that as we've gone through the practice rounds way back in September, early September, a couple of those rounds, and then 7 rounds in phase A, and now 5 rounds in phase B, it might start to get old, me going through the rounds again. You probably have picked up a lot of the main things that you need to be picking up, and I'm hoping that within your team, your couple teammates, that you are able to observe things and have some good conversations on things. So I don't think I'm going to get as detailed as I have in the past. Or if I do touch upon things, it might just be a lot quicker than what I've done in the past. So that's going to be part of it, going over the rounds. Again, a couple of chapters, topics, and then some of the upcoming assignments. As you have probably noticed with glee, that we do not have an assignment this Thursday. Frequently, I also have a kind of an end of the week type of an assignment. Anyway, not going to have that this time. But anyway, I'd also appreciate it if any of you have individual questions, questions about something related to BSG. Certainly as I'm going through it, I would love to have you interrupt me and bring it up, because my guess is whatever thing might be confusing to you, a certain number, a report, an interpretation of something, if it's confusing to you, it's probably confusing to a couple other people that are also on this. And be forewarned, I do have a couple of dogs, as you know, and who knows if they're going to be barking at some point. My apologies in a little bit early. All right, so this is, I am assuming that you can see the screen and the year 15 scoreboard. And if by chance you cannot see it, somebody let me know, but if you can see it, then don't worry about it. Anyway, this is what's happening. In the past, we have seen a lot of negative numbers, as you know, but it looks like this year, not nearly as many negatives, and compliments to the C team and the B team, which I think are both in this Zoom session. So again, something was going right there. And obviously that's the 1 year. This is the year to date that is going on. Okay. Other things that I frequently look at, financial statistics. And what we have going on here, we have people buying back shares of stock. That's all of the negative numbers that they are spending a lot of money buying back shares of stock. And you can see the D team in particular, that they are down to 16.5 million shares. Looks like the G team raised some money. They were selling shares of stock. I'm not sure if I worded this correctly. Any negative number here means that they are buying back shares of stock. So they are taking shares of stock out of circulation. That's what the negative means. And if it's positive, that means that they are raising money by selling shares of stock. And so the G team has now 21 million shares of stock And you can see others having less. The B team has 24 million. In my other class, um, online students that purely online students, somebody has up to 25 million shares of stock this semester. And I think the record that I've seen was somebody maybe last semester had 29 million shares of stock. I do not recommend selling shares of stock being a significant or a major way of raising money in order for you to pay for your investments. Ideally, you're able to use your 5 or 10-year loans to be doing that. Anyway, so we've got the buybacks, and then also this is giving out and paying out dividends. Again, just a reminder that there is a certain approach to giving out dividends. That a couple suggestions I have that tend to have this dividend policy be helpful. Otherwise, it can be hurtful. So that would probably be in your cash and finance decision screen in the help area or your player's guide. Um, Having some zero cash on hand, again, your balance sheets can frequently help you identify why you thought you might have had $99 million in profit, yet you ended up with zero cash on hand. That's a good thing to be figuring out. And usually, if you have zero cash on hand, actually, I'm going to go and show you this um, a balance sheet for the L team. If you have zero cash on hand, then you will probably in your balance sheet have something right here that shows you how much money you overspent. So you will end up needing some type of an overdraft loan payment. So basically, as you can see, note 6 down here, that means that you are paying an extra 2% um, over your 1-year loan. Basically, it's an expensive loan. It's an emergency loan that somebody gave you, but they're charging you up to wazoo for it. So if you had zero cash on hand, look in your balance sheet, specifically here, and you'll see how much over you went. I've seen some that are only over by, like 500,000, others that are over $88 million. So be careful there. And again, here are some of the explanations of why what looked like a profit ended up with zero cash on hand. All right. And we were looking at the financial statement or financial statistics, forgive me that. So those are those things there. The days of inventory, we've got we've got up to 201 days of inventory. This team, it would be wise, and probably all of you that are over 40 or something like that, you may want to be looking at your distribution and warehouse report. And let's look, I think I'll be in year 11. And you can see this team that that we were just looking at has 3 million pair of shoes that are still left. Anyway, want to point that out. And that is kind of indicated with the days of inventory. Again, with industry overview, this is what I always look for to figure out what my competition is able to do. You should be able to do that. One huge thing I want to point out this year in years 15 going into year 16 is that many of you may have started out with a fair amount of equipment, but this is a year that a lot of your equipment um, was went away. It became too old. So you can see the I team, the E team. You will probably, unless your strategy is to minimize sales or production, at least in North America, that could be a strategy. But if it's not, then some of you are going to want to be making sure that you are buying equipment. Again, as I pointed out, this is what the demand that's going to be happening over the next few years. there's going to be growth. Actually, the growth is slowing down a little bit as we get into these next number of years. Here is the supply, potential supply, and then here's the demand. And as usual, so you've got your inventory, which is the accumulation of all 12 teams' inventory that's left over. And then you have the potential production here of 180,000. And just to remind you what that means is that is this number, what everybody has equipment for, and then you multiply that and you add the 20% in overtime, and that's how you get the 180. Now, again, if by chance people buy more equipment, then that number will go up and that number will be going up. But I know I've pointed that specific way of getting the number out at least a couple times. Let's see. So this again tells you what your competition might be capable of doing and if they've been expanding. So you can see this right here is all construction that was just built last year. So then it has gone this year void of any equipment in it, but it is plausible now that they will at least have that added space if they want to put more equipment in there. All right. Operating benchmarks, as usual, your numbers will be out here, whether you're making any profit or not. And in the branded operating, you can see that everybody, which is good, is making a profit. However, I want to point out that somebody is losing $18 a pair of shoes in private label in North America. And that is probably not what you want to have happen. You will want to notice that, and your number will be right out here. And it may not look that way as you look at your private label, as you look at, well, yeah, as we look at the competitive efforts, it's not going to be a given on who it is that's losing $18. You'd think somebody that's only charging $14 a pair of shoes in the bid would be the one to lose that significant amount of money, but that's not going to be the case. So anyway, you will want to notice if that is you or not and address that issue. The other things I want to point out, certainly with celebrities, that it's getting a little bit pricier. I think in previous years it has not been as expensive, but now it is. And you can see that some of the teams have not been successful in the bids or have not strategically been doing that. And just kind of stating the obvious, winning celebrities does tend to help your marketing efforts and increase demand. But you have to pick and choose whether that's how you want to allocate some of your resources, which I think is a chapter 10 or 11 topic. Anyway, these are the trends that are going on. Now that we're getting to years 5 and on, we are starting to see a better history of prices and wholesale prices, SQ ratings. So this might help you now feel a little bit more confident as you predict your competitive averages in the next year. When we were only at year 1, it was hard to know what the trends were looking like. Now it does look a little bit more, it looks a little bit clearer. Let's see, credit ratings. We're seeing more A pluses as some of you solidify in your revenue streams and understand your costs. We're seeing some B minuses, C pluses over here, and we are getting less of those. So that is a good thing. Let's see what's going on with earnings per share. can see, variety from about 15.5 all the way down to $1.30. Return on equity is 7 all the way up to 80, and then stock prices over 400, over 200, over 200. And actually, let's show that while the D team might be excited and you go, oh my gosh, $407, that's outstanding. Wow, look at that. That was, gosh, what percentage? 120. That might have been about 40%. Yeah, about a 40% increase in stock appreciation from year 14 to year 15. So cool, 40% is cool. But look at the C team from 27 to 122. That is probably, that's 100. That is probably a 300 to 400% price appreciation. And the last math class I took, 300 to 400% appreciation was better than a 40% appreciation. So again, we might look at that high stock price and think they did the best. Well, cumulatively, that stock price is highest. But if you or your grandma had just invested money in the C team last year, they would be a little bit happier than had they just invested in the D team last year. Now again, had grandma invested in year 10 when you're all the same, can't quite remember what it was, she would be happier with the D team investment. Anyway, so that 400 was good. Obviously the B team is much lower stock price relative to many of the others, yet again, it had a 300 to 400% increase in price. So anyway, there's different ways to interpret the improvement of stock price. If you go from inception in year 10, it's a couple certain teams. But if you go from just 1 year to the next, it could be a different team. Pointing that out. All right, now certainly going into the comparative efforts, you've got your market share, yours compared to, as I've mentioned many times before, and then also the private label. Let's see, any glowing errors? Nope. So I love seeing that. Everybody's at 5-star. Nobody went above the maximum price. We can see that the D team had a little bit too high of a price. They had $41.95. Here we had $1 cheaper that sold everything. And it was this price right here that only sold partial. So 41.45 was the point that some sold, some didn't. And as usual, look at the spread that's going on. Let me just bounce, as I frequently do, to year 11. So you've got a lot of people hugging each other, and it's hard to compete. Year 12, much more spread. 13, big spread. 14, probably even more of a spread. And so this looks like the real estate that various teams are going to be claiming, at least for now. Anyway, pointing that out, that's Latin America. Oh, how did I get to Latin America so quickly? Oh, I think I did that earlier. In North America, we've got this going on, and I think the F team might have been the one that split, so they're a little bit high here. And gosh, there was a pretty humorous thing I wanted to point out, if I can find it. Shoot. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look for it. Anyway, so that was North America. You can see the variety of market share going from 5.2 all the way up to 15.3. And again, one of the things that I point out, keep in mind the number of retail outlets. So we have from 687 all the way up to 5,000 retail outlets. And so those that are significantly lower than the average, as I've suggested a couple times before, you want to be looking at what are the reasons that retail outlets want to abandon you. Well, that is always a good thing to know because it tends to be more helpful to sell out of 5,000 stores than only 687 stores. How's North America? Okay, Europe, Africa. And then Asia Pacific. All right, the H team kind of got caught. You can see that number. They were hoping to get to that 16.7% area, yet they priced it just a little bit high. And here we have a pretty good example. Yep, that a $39.22 price sold all 560,000 shoes. But if you went up 76 cents, you were at only partial. And then you can see that this team was 1 penny higher than that one, and they didn't sell any. And same with this team. So 39.98 sold some. We had two teams at 39.99 and they zeroed out. Anyway, good to notice that happens frequently. And actually what I was looking for there 4 or 5 minutes ago was in a previous year, and maybe it's this one, I'm not sure. But, oh, hold it, that's year 15, forgive me. Okay, that was good. Okay, in year 16, what happened here? Yep, similar thing. We had 37.95, sold 635,000 shoes, and we had 37.99 that sold 0. And then obviously $38 sold 0. 30, and here's 1 penny. 37.96 is where the cutoff point was. Oh, anyway, pennies matter. I guess that's nickels matter. So it's a painful thing because a number of teams here, the F team and the C team, basically did not use this much of their factory space because, this much of their factory space. And that means your per shoe cost goes up because you're underutilizing things. And then we were in Latin America. Let's just take another look in Latin America. And this is what we're looking at. 41.45 was a cutoff point, so that 70 cents makes a difference. All right, again, regional average competitive efforts can help you fill in the wholesale marketing competitive assumptions. If you remember that section in your wholesale marketing decision screen at the bottom, when you're predicting what your competition is doing, which helps your projections be more accurate, looking at this stuff can help you be more accurate with the other things. The income statements are where you can see what's going on with your operating profits. That's one place that you can see. Down here, operating profits. Well, this is your branded performance. This is your income statement up here with all the revenues. Certainly your distribution warehouse report is where you can see your inventory, as I pointed out 28 times, your production and workforce is what shows you your goal there. And 120% is a good number if you don't have this going on. So 120% means that you're cranking and you're making all of those shoes everywhere. Total 100%, your normal and your overtime. So that can be good. That does help your per unit production costs go down. However, the problem is if you have 3 million shoes left over. So just because you're making all these shoes doesn't mean that you are selling all these shoes. So pointing that out. Let's see what else do I want to. All right, I'm going to go on some other things unless somebody had a specific question about one of the reports and what to look at and maybe how to interpret anything. Any questions with that? All right. Okay. And then what I want to talk briefly about are some of the chapters. The chapter 9. Last week we went over this chapter, and I want to show you one quote and then one of the figures. I want to remind you of the quote that you are more than familiar with, and that is this one right here, that it takes a long time for people to recognize how talented you are, how ethical you are, and what a good teammate you are, what a good contributor you are to the organization's success, la da 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 da. So it takes some time for you to build that up and be recognized. Yet, it's very quick to lose that. And sometimes, obviously, people consciously make bad decisions, unethical decisions. They look bad and they may deserve to look bad. Sometimes people look like they've made a bad decision and that was not their intention. So you got to be careful about managing your impressions. I'll just leave that at that. Anyway, that is the one quote I wanted to point out, and then the figure coming down, you might want to avert your eyes because you're going to get a little dizzy. And it is this. Talked about this kind of at the very end. I might have been running out of time. Anyway, this is one of my, as I mentioned, favorite figures out of this book. And the concept behind this is that it is very easy to see these types of things go on when a company is unethical. There are fines, there might be penalties, maybe even people go to jail, and lower stock price can be happening. So these are, as it says, visible. Administrative costs, you could be forced to educate everybody. Corrective actions and future compliance. The courts may impose these types of things on you. All right, so these two areas all make sense. This is the one that is a little bit more difficult to actually see, yet it will be part of many of your lives. Part of it, that is because when you are looking for organizations to work for, one of your factors is going to be the reputation of that company. And if it has a positive reputation in the community, that can be much easier to decide to work for, as opposed to those companies that have done some slimy things and it's in the media and social media and things like that. So again, you're going to have that loss of reputation, which will affect customers certainly, but it's also going to affect your employees. Now I'm taking a perspective, if you're a leader of an organization that has done unethical things, you're going to lose some of your best employees. And that's the point. Your best employees, well, Many of your employees are going to want to look for another job. They're not going to be happy to be working for you if you're doing some slimy things. So they're going to be looking for jobs. So you're going to have your outstanding employees looking for jobs and those employees of yours that aren't very good. They're just not high performers. Which of those two groups do you think are going to find it easier to find another job? Those top performers in your organization are going to find it much easier to get other jobs because they're going to have things to talk about, the accomplishments they have. They're going to have their star examples that they're going to be able to bring up of their accomplishments. So it's going to be easier for your top people to get other jobs with other companies, even worse if it's your competition. It's going to be your employees that aren't very good, kind of your lower level employees, not just lower level, but lower performing employees. They're going to be the ones that are going to have a more difficult finding other jobs. So they're going to be the ones that stay with you. So the proportion of high level skills to lower level skills is going to be going down because of a company's unethical behaviors and employees wanting to leave. And then related to that, it's going to be much more difficult to recruit employees. And again, similar to what I was just saying, if you're an organization that's done some slimy things, your top employees are going to be leaving, you're going to need to fill those positions. Your company then has a bad reputation. So who's going to be applying for your jobs? The better employees are going to be able to find other jobs elsewhere, the better applicants. It's going to be those people that have a difficult job finding other jobs with other organizations. They're going to end up applying to that unethical organization. So anyway, there's a lot of as less visible issues that are going to be going on. That's why I like to really emphasize this particular figure. And let me get out of this. Let me go to chapter 10. This is a chapter that we did not get to. And this is talking about, as you know, I like to, some general stuff. This chapter 10 and 11 and probably 12 are talking about just things to do your execution well. And one focus of chapter 10 talks about staffing and the people. And this is a quote that I like. As you can see, people are not your most important asset, the right people are. So that's a quote. As you can tell, I like it not only for work, hiring the right people. And one of the common mistakes, and many of you have seen it, that in organizations you've worked for, is that there's an opening, somebody left or whatever, and the bosses ended up being too quick to hire somebody. They didn't have a good, thorough selection process. So you bring in the wrong people. Somebody whose values, work ethic, whatever, is just not a good mix. So that is an important thing. And one tip that I would give all of you is to take the time to have a good selection process. There's going to be pressure just to fill a position quickly. Oh, we need somebody, hire somebody quick, quick, quick. And that tends not to be a good recipe for hiring a top quality person that's going to be good in the mix. And then my philosophical point here is it's not just work, but also hang around the right people in your life, in your personal life. You have all seen some of your friends that have gotten in with the wrong crowd, whether it's just a low work ethic crowd. I'm not necessarily talking about a druggy type crowd, but just somebody that has, they're in a group that just doesn't do much. They're just low energy. They always have excuses, and it's important to not just in your personal life as well and professional life to not hang around those. The other point I want to point out is that bosses notice, and this, let's get back to the professional. You're a new employee. You come into the organization. Your bosses are excited for you to come in, but they are noticing, and you will want to be careful about who you end up hanging around. If you are hanging around some people that are big complainers, they're always finding things that are going wrong, they're pointing out the negative and the traits of the boss and the work systems and how stupid things are, you'll want to try to calmly, casually, quietly remove yourself from hanging around those negative people. Because again, your bosses and your other coworkers are noticing who you're going to be hanging around. So that's one of your more important decisions when you go into a new organization is to kind of find the right people to seek as mentors or to seek as a group that you're going to hang around. Enough of that. Ah, but here's a very good point. Formulating strategy often requires different skills than executing strategy. This is a big issue with small businesses. Many of you might be thinking of opening your own business, starting a small business, and there are people that have great ideas and can get things started, but frequently the skills of that creativity and energy at the beginning, it's a different skill set to actually take that organization and create the processes and follow through on policies and things of that nature. Um, and actually, I remember in high school, one of my best friends, Chuck, he was a great guy. And it was one of those things where one thing that I saw with Chuck and me is that I could come up with the ideas and get things going, but Chuck would be the one to come in and continue it, take it over, and make it happen and follow through. He was much better at follow through than I was, but I was much better at creating ideas than he was. So there's different skill sets. And one of the common mistakes made in small businesses is the person that comes up with the idea and gets it going thinks that he or she is also the one that can execute it. And again, frequently it's a different skill set, and there's wisdom in bringing people in that have that different skill set. And if any of you are familiar with the strengths-based leadership, information about people having different strengths, one of the main points is there's people have different strengths, and that when you are putting together a team, it's wise to put together people that have different complementary strengths. One of the common psychological mistakes that we have in hiring and recruiting is that we hire those people that are similar to us. We feel comfortable with people that kind of get us and we just click and we mix and we're similar. Well, that that tends to not be a complementary skill set. So seek again. Different people are. All right. And a point here talks about in your creating strategy, it is wise to involve a lot of people. And in your organizational behavior classes, maybe your management 301, if they talked about motivating others, one of the things that's valuable is to involve others in your decisions. If you involve them, ask them questions, then they feel more of a part of things and tend to be more committed to making it happen. And that is why, and I should go down here a little bit. Um, that it's the whole management team, not just the senior managers, that should be crafting strategy. So, and also executing that strategy. And that's what this is all about. That you have the top management, middle management, lower management. You have arrows going both ways. So there should be communication happening both ways. And some of you have worked in organizations where the managers are great at communicating with you, asking questions. Great. Many of you are also experienced in organizations where the top managers basically tell you what to do and they don't ask you and they may not give a rip what you think or if you want to notice things. The danger in that, however, is that frequently it's the lowest level people in many organizations, it's the lowest level people that are actually interacting with the customers. So they are hearing the customers' suggestions. They are noticing their reactions to different features. They are noticing the complaints, hearing the complaints from the customers. So it's those lowest level employees directly interacting with the customers that have a lot of good information. And it's valuable to ask them and have ways to get that information up. Um, and then also, so there's those lower level customers that may be lower level employees interacting directly with customers. In a lot of organizations, it's a lower level employees that are interacting with the processes, the machines, and the policies and procedures. And they're the ones noticing problems and coming up with ideas of suggestions of how things could improve. But if nobody above them asks, then a lot of those great ideas are not identified and used. So again, you as a manager, as a leader, will be setting the culture and creating the culture in your department, division, your overall organization. And one important suggestion, tactic, tool is for you to make sure that the mid-level, lower level people have opportunities to give insights and input on process procedures and also giving suggestions. So that is another important managerial lesson. And again, the whole idea of involving people gains their ideas and their support. Um, and this has a list, this has the visual, the 8 components of strategy execution. So again, we've got making sure you staff well, you have needed financial and organizational resources. So the allocation of resources is extremely important. And I think I've got a comment on that a little bit later on. Policies and procedures. Actually, I was just in a meeting with the president and a number of VPs yesterday, and we were discussing the policies and procedures, trying to remove barriers. And the focus there was, as you could understand, with enrollments and a lot of students throughout the nation with COVID, kind of deciding whether they should go back to college or not. Do we have policies and procedures that are causing barriers to people and students coming back? That was part of that conversation. Best practices, information systems. This is increasingly important to have your IS and IT systems that you'll be able to know information and be able to respond to customers and things of that nature. Rewards and incentives in your staffing, creating that corporate culture, and effective leadership, as we were just talking about before. So these are a variety of things that are important in getting things happening. Let's see. And here's a valuable point that is made. As organizations get bigger, top managers transition from being doers, and actually that should be doers, to communicators and organizers. Again, if you're a small organization, top management might actually be doing things. It might be out on the floor. They might be interacting with customers. They may be making things. But as the organization goes from 5 people to 50 to 500 to 5,000 to 50,000, obviously top management is no longer directly interacting with the customers selling that sweater or on the line at the machine punching those stamps or something along those lines. So again, as the organization gets bigger, top leaders end up becoming communicators of ideas and energy and then helping organize things. So that's a transition. And as you get into your first jobs, frequently you're going to be doers with a little bit of organizing, communicating. But as you move up levels, your doing is going to be going down and your communicating and organizing is going to be going up. Let's see. And then it just talks about this chapter focuses on staffing, chapter 11 on allocating resources, and 12 about corporate culture. Um, okay. All right, that's main things I wanted to point out there. Let me briefly point out something in chapter 11. And with this, again, internal operations, and this is allocating resources. Um, and my comment here, this is true leadership. Motivation is the art of getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. An effective leader gets you on board, it gets you uh, agreeing with the values of the organization and the goals and the strategy of the organization. It enlists your support, it involves you. So then you want to do these things rather than being coerced to do them and punished. And you'll be punished if you don't do them. So again, true leadership, you are able to convince your employees to do things because it makes sense to them. They want to do it. And then here's another good quote as we are having conversations about minimum wage throughout the nation. Pay your people the least possible and you'll get the same from them. I think it's a good point. You know, I hear organizations talking all the time about how difficult it is to, you know, they have high turnover. A lot of their employees are leaving. And I'm thinking, okay, well, why are they leaving? Is it because the culture sucks? They don't feel valued? Even if you're paying them well, you're not listening to them, you're treating them poorly, that could be it. But frequently, because labor costs are a significant part of an organization's expenses, uh, a lot of organizations are trying to minimize labor costs, which means paying the minimum amount, cutting back on benefits, and cutting back on training and things of that nature. So whenever I hear these organizations talk about how difficult it is for them to keep their employees, um, I think you need to look internally and see if there are some things you can do that um, get people to want to stay with you because they feel valued. Not only their ideas valued, but they're valued because you are paying them a living wage, which they can put food on a table, they can put their kids through college, and they can buy something besides a 15-year-old car. Um, anyway, and then here are 5 valuable things. Allocating needed financial resources. Yes, here it is. Here's what I wanted to point out. And this is a management mantra I have said for decades and decades right here. One of your most important managerial skills is resource allocation, which means when you say yes to someone's request frequently because money is limited, resources are limited, that also means you're saying no to other people's requests. And that's just part of leadership. You got to figure out what your strategy is, what your future is, make investments for the future, those that seem to be have the most likely payoff. And those things that are not as promising, uh, you may, again, be cutting resources. You may be taking staff away from these departments, divisions, and putting them in towards others. You know, certainly the whole idea of, when IBM was selling laptops and then decided to get out of laptops and go into more consulting, have a greater proportion of their revenues come from consulting and those type of services. That meant that they sold off and got rid of their manufacturing plants that actually made laptops, and then they put more money into and beefed up in staffing their consulting services. Similar with Redbox. Right now, many of you have gone to a Redbox vending machine and gotten those DVDs out. They're still out there. But if you've noticed, if you have Redbox, they also have streaming services because that seems to be the thing. So Redbox is putting more money into the streaming technology and stepping back their resource allocation with their big vending machines. Anyway, that's the process of organizations growing and their environments, their culture, their customers wanting different things, is you need to invest in the future. Again, that's saying yes to something, but also saying no to other things. Um that is a main point. As I've mentioned, for decades, this has been a big thing that I've emphasized, not only in my classes, but when I'm out consulting as well. And certainly when I'm out consulting and talking to 30 to 60-year-old people that have been in the trenches and talking about saying yes to certain things means saying no to others, there's a lot of head nodding that goes on because they have been through that. They've heard yeses to their ideas, and they've probably all heard a lot of no's to their ideas as well. And to tell you the truth, when you tell people no, that's going to be a reason people get pissed off at you. I know in a variety of organizations, and let's talk about universities. One of my bosses is a dean. So at Ferris, the dean of the College of Business, he has to say yes to certain things, or he wants to say yes to certain things, but with limited resources, that means he's saying no to others. And it upsets a lot of people when they hear no's. But it kind of comes with the territory of leadership. Now, ideally, the leader would be able to communicate why the no does not fit into the vision of the future and get people to understand that. But still, it's tough for people to hear no. And why is it tough? A lot of no's happen because money is tight. All right. I think that is, oh, well, this chapter, I'm going to spend about 30 seconds on this, talks about best practices, business process reengineering, Six Sigma, TQM, benchmarking, things of that nature. Those are all terms that are valuable for you to know. My guess is you've heard these in various classes. Part of this, the reason and purpose of this class and going through chapter and terms, as I talk about, is you at the water cooler. You're going to be at an organization, and if we ever go back to face-to-face stuff, we will be seeing people, and you might be in the hallways, you might be at the water cooler concept, and they're going to be tossing out terms, and it's just good for you to be knowing that. Concepts of best practice, benchmarking, Six Sigma, TQM. There's a lot of the lean terms that are going on. And it's wise for you to be able to know those terms instead of going to cooler as, gosh, what is Kaizen? I don't know. What's Kaizen? They're going to be looking at you going, oh, really? You don't know what that is? So it's wise to know a lot of the terms. And that's one purpose of going through the chapters, but the concepts are also important. All right. So that is what I wanted to talk around 7 on Thursday. The peregrine, that's going to be something that I'm going to make a change on that. I'm going to put that later. Oh, actually, let me point out, also remind you that professional contact, that interview with somebody ideally in your career field is due after Thanksgiving. Just want to remind you, give you that heads up. Don't want you to forget about that. And certainly, Zoom-based or even phone calls will be fine on that. In previous years when I've done this, I have emphasized, and I think my instructions may even emphasize that I want you in a face-to-face meeting with these people. Well, that certainly is by the wayside with COVID, but don't forget about that assignment. And the peregrine assignment, the change that I'm going to make on that, that is worth up to 30 points. And I was going to make that a 30-point assignment, but now I'm kind of taking that out of my normal assignments, and I'm going to make this assignment an extra credit. So as we've done this online stuff, people have, a fair number of people have struggled getting all of the assignments in or doing well on the assignments. So I think I'm going to help with some extra credit points, and that'll be peregrine. And let's see what I have written down for the peregrine, if I have much yet in here. Okay, so I have that. The peregrine assignment is basically going to be an assessment that is done nationally. It helps Ferris figure out how our students are doing in comparison to other students in various colleges of business throughout the nation, maybe even the world. So it's going to be, I think, about 120 multiple choice assessment that asks you questions about the variety of classes that you've taken in your College of Business core. So some questions about economics, about accounting, finance, marketing, IT and IS, your strategy class. It'll have classes out of your principles of management as well. And I think even statistics. So it'll have a lot of questions about the types of classes you've taken over the years. And then it gives us information at Ferris about how our students have done in comparison to other students at other places. So that's helping us and going to offer significant extra credits for that. And I'll be clarifying those. And the way that that assessment goes, it's in percentile. You're familiar with your statistics class or other types of classes. If something is at the 50th percentile, that means that of the 500 people that took this, that the 50th percentile is smack dab the 250th person, kind of both ways. It'd be right there in the middle, that performance, approximate definition of it. If you were in the 90th percentile, that means out of the 500 people, you are kind of at the 450th highest score. So this is largely based on percentiles, and there'll be something that if I think if you get over the 50th percentile or 50th percentile, you'll get 25 out of the 30 extra credit points. If you get over the 60th percentile, you get all 30 of the extra credit points. And 30 points out of ours is plausibly up to about 5 or 6% of your total grade. So if you were getting a B and you did very well on this Peregrine and you got 27 to 30 of those extra credit points, that moved you from a B plausibly to an A minus. So it's a significant extra credit. And actually, I should have pointed this out in the, I think in the chapter 11 that you just went, one of the main points of rewards and incentives was to make it worth your while. So I think plausibly getting an additional 5% or 6% in your total grade in this class, I hope would be worth your while. If our class is worth a total of 600 points, and I said, well, if you do really well on this, I'm going to give you an extra 3 points. It's like, big whoop, who's going to do that? But an extra 30 points could be a bit of a whoop. Anyway, so that Peregrine, and I'm also going to move that a little bit later. I'll have more clarity on the Peregrine assessment assignment written up and sent to you. But certainly we are cranking out on rounds 6 and 7 and round 8. Round 8 in the thing, we have a 3-year strategic plan that's also going to be due in round 8. And that will be in your in your BSG area. You'll be able to access that, and I'll have more information on that. So that is largely that assignment will have you predict, because if you're getting better, remember you've gone through phase A, 7 rounds, phase B, you will have gone through 7 rounds. The 3-year strategic plan assignment is having you predict how you're going to be doing in years 8, 9, and 10 with your earnings per share, your stock price. So it's looking at how you've been doing. And this is a very important skill that leaders need, is to be able to predict the future. And that's what that assignment is, your performance in the future. So that is in the schedule that is up above here. But at this point, I don't have it woven into this, and I will be putting that in. All right, so we've talked about round 5 results in BSG. Talked a little bit, repeating of chapter 9 on ethics, chapter 10 of other tactics that need to have good execution, and that there's a difference between formulating strategy and executing it. Chapter 10 focused on staffing, and a lot of the important things about finding and hiring good people. Remember, have a good selection process. Don't rush selection. Also have good incentives. And then chapter 11, the whole idea of allocating resources is a huge leadership strategic set of decisions. And when you say yes to some people, you are calmly saying no to other investments. So the economic concept of opportunity costs and returns on investment are important. And as you move up, verbally convincing somebody that they need to invest money is less and less likely to happen. Those people are going to want to hear your words, but they're also going to want to see the numbers. What's the investment? What are the expected returns on this? What variance might there be? And this is from my point of view, a common disservice that we teachers do when you give presentations is we tend to be fairly kind when there are holes in the logic in a presentation. Many times we faculty will just say, oh, that was interesting, nice job. But out there in real life, you're going to have some people sitting in that room that are going to ask very specific pointed questions about where's that money going to come from? Why shouldn't we put that money over here? Are you sure that we're going to get that 25% return? What if this happens? It seems like the trends culturally are more towards this. We're losing customers here. Did you take that into consideration? Out there in the real world, when you're doing your presentations to try to convince people to invest, your bosses to invest, you need to have the numbers backed up and be prepared for some tough questions. Anyway, so chapter 9, 10, and 11, and then talked a little bit about upcoming assignments. Don't forget the professional contact. Conversation with that person is going to be due on the 30th. I think that's the Monday after Thanksgiving. All right. If there are some questions, I would love to answer some questions. All right, then I am largely done. You can linger on if you have more of a private question. Otherwise, well, I hope round 6 goes well. Make sure you invest in equipment. All right, anybody staying on it has a question? Kendall, Josh, Shay? And again, if you have a question, you'd have it rather privately, just come on and I will arrange a meeting in 5 or 10 minutes with you so I can talk with each of you privately. Just let me know, or you could even put that in the chat to me. If you click on chat and instead of everyone, you just send me a message. That's another way. And then I can contact you. I could send you a Zoom link. Anyway, Josh, Kendall, Shay, are you there or did you step away? That's always a question I have, is when I don't see people, if they are really there or not. Okay, then I might end this meeting. So I think people have stepped away. If by chance you do want to have a conversation with me, just send me an email and I will contact you. All right, I'm going to end this meeting. If you're there, bye.